Good evening. How is everybody? We all
Good.
good?
How are you?
I'm excited to be here. I was just communicating with one of my groups, trying to put together something for graduation for the Gaston group that's finishing up this spring. I want to go by and visit all their schools one last time, so I'm trying to put together there's 14 of them, and so I want to devote the month of March to get out and visit their schools and see their administrators and thank them for participating in the program. And they, as I said yesterday, I'll never do this again, but I'm very happy that the students are getting through. They've been a good group. It's just been all of the politics surrounding it. It's been terrible, but that's okay. All right. So welcome everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's time to get started. Thank you, Dr. Griffin Jordan, for being with us tonight, our resident expert. So I'm going to dive right in. The first thing I want to talk about is OMA Task 1, the last of the prompt one, the last sentence. There seems to be, and I guess I didn't cover this good enough, there seems to be some confusion. What we're asking you in the last of the bulleted on prompt 1, task 1 of the OMA, the last thing we're asking you, let me interpret this for you. We're asking you what involvement your school improvement team has in the development of the local school budget. Now, you get money from all these sources for your budget. You get federal money, you get state money, you get local district money, you have your own money that you've raised or clubs accounts. So you have 4 different areas, but somebody has to put all that together in one document and say, this is our budget this year. These are our priorities. Now, we've talked about the triangle. At the top of the triangle, let me get this over here where you can see, at the top is the school improvement plan. And the bases of the triangle are the master schedule and the budget. They both must support the school improvement plan if any of those things are to come to fruition. We can say we want to improve reading, but we don't put any extra time in our master schedule. That's not going to happen. We can say we want to improve reading, but if we don't put our budgetary items behind that, then it's not going to happen. Dr. Robin Hamilton works with us, and one of the things that she talks about all the time is she looks at where, when she's making these kind of local decisions in her master schedule, she looks at testing. For example, if you look at what counts in elementary school, only 1/6 of her report card comes from 4th grade. Half of it comes from 3rd grade. So if she has a choice between where in her master schedule, where does she put her strongest teachers? 3rd grade. That's just common sense. Also, if she has uneven numbers and she has to decide between where the extra teacher goes between 4th grade and 3rd grade, where does it go in the master schedule? It goes in 3rd grade. If you've got to choose between buying a software package for reading, and do you buy it for the science people or the math people or the reading people? If you're in your school improvement plan that says we're going to focus on reading this year, well, you would buy it for the reading people then. That's pretty simple. So the notion here is this: what role does the school improvement team play in developing that local budget? Because who owns the school improvement plan? The school improvement team. So if they have no voice in the local budget, if that's not a part of the process, if the principal just gets together in the summertime and says, I think the money ought to go here, here, and here, and writes it all up, and the school improvement team's not involved, what are the chances that budget is going to support the school improvement plan? Very little. And even if it does, why do we have a team if we're not going to pull them together and talk to them about important things like that? And so some of you, so now if you say, well, we don't, that's not a part of our process, well, then you need to say that. School improvement team has no role in the budgetary process, or it all goes through them, or wherever it is. But that's a very important piece. You know, we're talking about operations and planning this semester. We're not talking about hope. Everybody's got to have hope, but hope is not a plan. Well, you would hope that the principal would look at the school improvement plan and would talk to the school improvement team. That's not a plan. That's hope. I want to know what role. I mean, is it embedded in your process or not? Does the school improvement team get a voice? Do they have a seat at the table when that local budget is developed or not? It's pretty simple. That's what we need to know. That's one of the biggest failings that I see in schools. They go to all the trouble to develop they do the data dive, they do all the things that they need to do to come up with their most pressing need. They write action plans and do all that. And they either don't put the money behind it or don't schedule behind it. Just hope that
manual when compared the print to the ones that Ryan collected from the club. Sandy is Nina, the club owner's alibi. What do you know? Chase Shaw again. Thank you.
Okay. So now Dr. Griffin Jordan has gone into this in the past, so I know that this is going to be an easy question for her. She is the master at this. So Dr. Griffin, explain your process again. I was so impressed the first time I heard this, I actually wrote it down. So Dr. Griffin Jordan, explain to them what we're talking about here.
So this is the process for building the budget around your school improvement team and your school improvement plan. It's very important that you don't look at it as losing control by allowing a group of people that are your stakeholders to have a say-so, because you need the buy-in. Anything that's going to be successful in your school has to have the buy-in from the people you serve. So the school improvement team, you've got to have teachers on it. You've got to have students on it. You've got to have parents on it. If there's a close community partner that collaborates with you, it is very important that you have all the stakeholders so that they feel they have a voice. Once you have their voice heard, they will bend over backwards to make sure your plan is successful, because the district is going to come to you when you're looking at those goals and seeing if you have met your goals in your school improvement plan. And you can't do it by yourself. So you can't lock yourself in a room and say, okay, so I'm going to put this amount of money to this group, this amount of money to this subject, without getting their input, because you will have some teachers that are going to just be like, well, you know, that's not what we need. We need this over here. And you might get some pushback, but if you can, and you have to present it to the staff. So once you meet, you determine, because the school improvement team is a representative of your staff, your school community. Once you present it to your school community, there will be buy-in, because their coworkers, their peers are the ones that help put that plan together. So it's crucial. And we've just updated ours. And actually this Thursday morning, we're because we're preparing for the teacher working condition survey. So we're going to remind all of our teachers of our goals, show them the progress we've made toward the goal. You have to do that, a few times each year, just so that everybody's updated in your process. But please make sure, as far as the budgeting goes, as Dr. Lamb indicated, your local budget, now you have monies from the state, federal, different places, different entities. That local budget that you get should be spent on instructional supplies. It should be spent on incentives for your students and your teachers. So if you're spending it on them, please allow them the opportunity to have some say-so as to what they need, because it's been a while since I've been a teacher. I might think I know what they need, but having them on the team saying, these are the things that we need, that holds a lot of weight. You still, in the end, you're still accountable, but please just allow them to have that necessary input.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin Jordan. I'm telling you, you may,
I think Sandy had her hand up.
yeah, I was going to go to that.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I had a question too. We're in the process of allotments, getting ready for our allotments, and we're doing a lot of cuts right now. That's coming up next school year, and we're trying to decide about like if we're gonna keep another instructional coach, or we're gonna add TAs, or we're gonna get rid of TAs, or like how is that also something the SIT does? Is that more so the principal making those decisions? Like if we want to keep the second coach and get rid of 2 TAs, or would we rather have TAs than a coach? Like, is that something the SIT team does, or is that more so the principal making those things, those decisions?
well, actually, in our district, the allotment meetings, the school principal attends that and has to make the overall decision for staffing in the school. However, that input is going to be crucial. I would still get the input from the teachers because they don't always know the ins and outs of allotments. So as much as you can, discuss with them the process and give them the opportunity to just share. A lot of times, sometimes, and my staff knows, I listen to them. A lot of their opinions and suggestions I take, but when I don't take their suggestion, they know that I'm doing what I feel is best because, I do listen to them. So yes, I still would get their opinion and get their whys. If they're in the classroom every day with those instructional facilitators or the TAs, let them tell you why they feel that one is needed over the other. And that will help you make a better informed decision when you go in front of your district personnel with your allotment request.
I want to share my screen and show a couple things to that end. Let me do a share. I'd have everything pulled up but what I needed. And so let me do this right quick. Let me go here. Okay, and so let me go here. Oh, that's too far. Here we go. So to make sure to kind of finish up this piece, what I was referring to here, OMA task, OMA template. Let me pull this one up. Okay, what I'm talking about is right here. The contextual analysis clearly describes the goals, process, and procedures within the budgeting process, not just what are my allotments. There's a process to a budget. What is that process? Principal sends out a wish list, needs. How does this go in the spring? Within this description, participation of school personnel, and that's what Dr. Griffin Jordan was just talking about, teachers and the school improvement team, which contains them as well. What their role in this is delineated. Does the principal consult with them? Do they get to have a part? Do they get, what is this? What that buy-in piece, is it there that Dr. Griffin Jordan just talked about now? Now, to the question that Sandy just asked, and thank you for asking that question again. If I can find it now, it shouldn't take me too long. Get off the screen. So when we were working, you might remember this, Dr. Hamilton that was working with us coaching last semester, she's coaching this semester. One of the things that she talks about is what Dr. Griffin Jordan was going to say. Dr. Hamilton is responsible, but as principals are on allotments, but they go to the school improvement team or they go to the faculty or both and say, this is what I'm thinking and this is why, to try to get that buy-in on those positions. And so what she was sharing with us, let me see if I can find this. let me get out of that and go here. It shouldn't take me but a second. Okay, let's see. Let's see. No, that's not it. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. What I'm looking for. Let me go here. I know where it is. Okay. Here we go. All right. So what she explained was this. This is what she went to her teachers and said. This is what she said right here. She said, I want the teacher to be in this grade level or the extra person here because look at this. She parted it out on test scores for them and said, this is why we need to have this particular teacher in 5th grade versus 3rd grade or 4th grade or 2nd or 1st or whatever. This is where we need to put this. And she went back and told them. She ran the numbers for them, where their numbers were. She showed them how they had been performing in all these grades. I mean, you can see, she pulled it right out and said that this is where we need this person for this reason. Yes, she made the decision, but she was able to articulate why she made that decision based on student performance. And that's where, and that's kind of my final on this is all of this stuff has to circle back around to student performance. Remember, that school improvement plan is about student performance. But if we don't put the money, if we don't put the schedule, if we don't put our best teachers teaching, or the teachers that get the best scores in particular things, now you say, well, they can't all be their best teachers. Well, we don't just say, well, these are the best ones and everybody else gets these over here. Remember that professional growth plan you developed at the end of last semester? That's the whole notion. Teachers that currently get the best scores with different groups of kids, that's where we put them. But we work to get all of them to that level. But we have to make some of those decisions, those extra pieces of personnel, coaches, are we going to do instructional facility, all of those things, everything we have to do, including our budget and our master schedule especially, have to support academic achievement, that school improvement plan. For the millionth time, you'll hear this from me till you get tired of it. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. What do we do in schools? We teach kids. Everything has to point back to student achievement. If it doesn't, we're wasting our time. We're wasting our effort. We've lost our way. We've lost our focus. But we've got to get that buy-in. We got to get that buy-in and take our stakeholders with us when we do the schedule and when we do the budget. The school improvement plan and the budget are public documents, by the way. That's why we make sure we go to our school improvement team that has parents and community members on it. You did know that the school improvement plan and the school budget are public documents. And any interested party or any parent in your school can come to your front desk and request a copy. And can you say to them, we don't give those out? You better not. It won't go well for you if you do something like that. So let me make sure I show you that before we go any further. I had it pulled up last week. It won't take me but a second to pull it up this week. And so I can let that one go. Okay. Okay. All right, let me go here. So if we go to our shell, and we click on Zoom session 1. Let's click on Zoom session 2, excuse me, from last week. That's where we're looking for. All right. North Carolina general statutes and South Carolina's are the same. They're just organized a little bit differently. So let's go to 115C 288. responsibilities of duties of the principal. And we go right here. What does this say? Every year, by law, you must establish a school improvement team which produces a school improvement plan. Right here it is. For purpose of developing, revising a school improvement plan. All right. What does this law right here say? It says to make available school budgets and school improvement plans. The principal shall maintain a copy of the school's current budget and school improvement plan, including any amendment to the plan, and shall allow parents of children in the school and other interested persons to review and obtain such documents in accordance with Chapter 132 of the North Carolina General Statutes. So this notion, we don't give our budget out. Yes, you do. We don't give out our school improvement plan. Yes, you do. And yes, you have to develop a school improvement plan every year, and it must have parents, it must have students if it's secondary, it must have teachers, and it must have any community partners, people in the community as well, on that school improvement team for the purpose of developing a school improvement plan. And that plan and that budget have to be available. Now, what about your master schedule? Does it have to be available? Absolutely. Where, and you say, well, all right, Dale, wait a minute now. My master schedule has to be available? It most certainly does. So when it doesn't matter if you do it on a piece of paper or whether you've got a big board in your building hid somewhere that's gridded off and you put the stickies on it. When it gets done, what do you have to do with it? You have to feed it into PowerSchool. And it becomes a public document that anybody can access. And it's on the portal. So all of these things can't be done in secret. They can't be done in isolation. You can't have that. I mean, this is a public endeavor here. I've seen way too many. Well, we'll do this schedule, but we'll really put these kids over here. They catch you doing that. We'll put this on the master schedule that this is where the kids are, but we'll really put them over here so that this teacher has 40 and this one only has 20. They got to both have 30. And if you get caught putting one schedule in PowerSchool and running another when they come out and all of it, they fire you on the spot. You don't even get a hearing. They'll fire you on the spot. They'll fire you with cause because you have intentionally deceived and defrauded and misspent federal and state and local money by doing that. So all of these things require openness, transparency, and they also require stakeholder buy-in. That's what we're trying to get at here, folks. What process is in place? How is the budgeting process? Not the accounting process, how we buy and sell stuff. The budgeting process. Where do we put our money in terms of our priorities? And what role does the school improvement team play in that budgeting process? Not allotments, not purchasing, budgeting. How are we going to spend our money? How much money do we have, and what are our priorities in spending it? That's what we're looking at. Okay, everybody got that? All right. Okay. I want to look at our assignment for this week. Yes, questions?
Just a quick question. I hear everything you're saying, school budget and the school improvement. I was just wondering, is it different when you have the private schools or the public charter schools, or does it switch up when you go to those schools, or these rules do they apply just across the board, period, point blank?
They switch up when you go to private schools. They have similar rules, but they're not under state law. Charter schools, same rules. Charter schools are state schools. Now they're going to try to buffalo you or bluff you into, we don't have to do what yes, they do. They have the same rules in charter schools as we do in any other public school. Now, where you will really see a big difference is in parochial and Catholic schools. Catholic schools, they don't release anything. Nothing is public in Catholic schools. And I'm not making a editorial comment on that. I'm just telling you, when you work for the diocese, they don't publish anything. I'm guessing if you went to court, you could probably get some of the documents if you were paying. If you had standing in court. But outside people, no, they not them. But private schools, most private schools do advertise most of these kinds of things if they're quality private schools, because parents are in the know. But charters and publics, yes, the rules are the same for them. It's a good question. All right. Now, one of the things that you're going to find about charter schools, and let me cover this quickly. Charter schools have some leeway on salaries and some contracted services and those kinds of things, but they still have to be public record of what they do. So for example, let's say Terrence and I go apply for a job over at the local charter school. And Terrence, what do you teach? Or what have you taught in the past?
I'm an EC teacher. EC.
All right. So Terrence is going to get his full state salary. He's probably going to get a bonus. He's going to get full retirement. They're going to roll out the carpet for Terrence because they need him. That's a shortage area. Now, let's say I go over there and I'm a chemistry physics teacher, or was at one time. They do the same for me. Why? Because again, it's a shortage area. It's got nothing to do with race or gender. They treat us both the same because we're in shortage areas. Now, let's say Neely goes over there, and Neely's a PE teacher. Will Neely get full state salary? No. They'll pay her as a long-term sub. Will she get any benefits? No. Will she get retirement? No. Because they don't have to hire certified teachers. They don't have to, especially in PE. PEs, they just use the long-term sub money. They'll pay her $55 a day. That's what she'd make at a charter school. Now, is that fair? Now, remember, grown folks understand that in adult life, there's no such thing as fair. That's a place you go in the fall of the year and get a corn dog, ride the Ferris wheel. There is no fair. If you want to work at a charter school, and you are a math science person or EC, something that's high need, low availability, they'll roll out the red carpet for you. They might even pay you more than state salary schedule, but you'll definitely get all your benefits and retirement. However, how do they make up for that? Well, poor old Neely gets $55 a day and a hale and hearty handshake, a slap on the back. Gets no benefits, gets no insurance, gets no nothing. That's the ugly side of that. That's the ugly side of charter schools. Now, I'm at home in Lake Norman tonight. Tell the background's a little bit different. Literally across the water right there, the water's right out the back door. Across the water is Langtree Charter School. Right over, once you get across both bays here, the water here, you're in Iredell County. And Langtree is right the very next exit up. I've got, Andrew Masseri, he's head of school over at Pine Lake Prep, right over there. I mean, I've had dozens of students in charter schools. I love charter schools. I don't have a thing in the world, but you got to understand, when you go to charter schools, all these standardized rules are kind of out the window. They still have some rules, but they have some discretion that you don't have in normal K-12 schools. So if they want to contract with the local supplier to bring in lunch every day, that's part of it. A lady that we know that that lives over in Concord, her children both go to a charter school, and she's really not happy because they're charging her $25 a day for her two kids to have school lunch. I mean, that's You know, that's part of the downside of where she's going to the charter school. It's an upper end charter school. They don't charge them a fee, but they charge activity fees for everything, and they charge a big lunch. And so in the end, she didn't realize that if you wanted to go to an upper end charter school, that it's going to probably cost you $4,000 or $5,000 a year per kid. I mean,
And
that's
also
part of it too.
transportation too,
Yeah.
Dr. Lamb, is an issue with charter schools. They don't
Yeah.
always offer transportation.
That is correct. She has to take her kids to school in the morning. Now, you know, charter schools vary from county to county, location to location. Where I would normally be on Tuesday night doing this video is at Lake Lure, which is in western part of North Carolina. And where that little town is in the lake there, their local public school is a charter school. That is their local public school. It's kind of a unique situation. They don't have any schools in Lake Lure. Any traditional public schools never did. They always bust them back down 18 miles back down to Rutherford. Well, they got a special dispensation and they have a K-12 charter school now in Lake Lure, Lake Lure Classical Academy. And so it operates more like a traditional public school because it is the public school for that part of the world. They do have school lunch. They do have transportation there. But that's not, you know, again, every charter school is a little bit different. So that one is Dr. Griffin Jordan. The one over in Concord I was just talking about, they don't provide lunch. They don't have a lunchroom, and they don't provide transportation. Conversely, Lake Lure Classical has both. Now, you know, those are the things that those variations in that charter school. But again, the bottom line, the part to remember is they are still public schools. And so reporting and transparency still has to be there. You just need to understand how that piece works. But that's a great question. And so I have a good many folks who work in charters. Lincoln Charter has been a very good one for us, and we're big supporters of them. But you know, before you jump into that world, you need to understand that world now, because many times once you go over to charters, it's sometimes hard to get back to traditional K-12s because there are some people who are still kind of old school in their thinking and pejorative against charter schools. There's good people in charter schools. I'm telling you, I've got some great former students who I keep up with regularly who do. I would send any child to their school. So, I mean, there's a, you need choices. You know, what we need to be more concerned about is that kids get educated, not where we educate. If you want a democratic society, if you want to live in democracy, you have to have education, folks. That's kind of the bottom line on that. So let me share my screen and let's look at our weekly schedule. So this week, what we were working on was, again, we're working off of liability and negligence and duties and responsibilities of school administrators. We started with safety, emergency plans, negligence, liability, your responsibilities. And so we followed up that with, finding your plans with examine your school or district field trip policy. A lot of us don't even know what those things contain and what our responsibilities are before we even leave campus with one of those groups. Now, you may not be the teacher sponsor of the field trip. You just may be the administrator that's along the way. But it behooves you to know all that stuff as well. And then if you're in an accident, what your responsibilities are as the person responsible on the trip. Now, Whitney made is Whitney with us tonight? But Whitney made a point. And I want to make sure that we get this right. Let me go back to my screen here. I don't see Whitney on the screen. But anyway, Whitney made a point that we're not expected to be medical, school people are not expected to be medical professionals in terms of our liability, in terms of getting treatment to students. But see, unfortunately, that knife cuts both ways in that, no, you're not expected to be a medical professional. So should you be making the decision whether to call emergency services or not? Well, I didn't see anybody that was hurt. Are you qualified to make that decision? No, you're not. So while you're not expected to act as a medical professional, you give first aid and comfort the best you can. The first thing that you've got to do is call 911. I don't care how minor it was, because when they get you on the stand, they're going to ask you where you got your medical degree, that you were able to immediately diagnose whether these kids needed medical attention or not. That is not a decision that you need to make. Your only decision is how do I get to my phone and call 911, period. I don't care how, there is no major, there is no minor. If there is an accident, I don't care what happened, you call 911 immediately, period. Any delay in emergency services whatsoever you will be guilty of negligence, period. Because again, you're not a medical professional. See, that knife cuts both ways. No, if you're not expected to be over there giving triage like you were a medic in the Army, but you're also, since you can't do that, they expect you to get somebody on the scene as quickly as possible. Who can? So let's look at what should be contained. So I've got a really good example of what the answer to this question should look like. And this is from one of our classmates, and I won't name the classmate, but this is from one of our classmates. And so right here it is. All right, so she started with, she had done this, but she really hadn't learned a lot about field trips. And so she went to the authorization, the paperwork that you have to do, the parental notice and consent. You can't believe how many parents, if something happens, they'll come yelling and screaming, I didn't know, I'm suing you because I didn't know that my child was on this trip and you didn't have my permission, or I didn't sign anything, or any of those things. You should know what the cost is. Safety and discipline about what happens during the trip, transportation and other accommodations. You should know all these things. You should have rules and policies about using parents on buses for field trips, charter buses, activity buses, chaperones and volunteers, non-school sponsored trips. And then she has all these things, but here again, call 911 and then follow this protocol right here. This is what we're talking about. You should know all this stuff. Now, before we get to Dr. Griffin Jordan, the expert, I will play the role of, the not expert tonight. I'll be the village idiot. Not a stretch for me. This is absolutely a true story. I was in my first assistant principalship. I had hair and it was black, if you can believe that. Serious. I was a middle school assistant principal, my very first assistant principal job. I wasn't even out of my 20s yet. And we went on a field trip to Asheboro to the zoo, the North Carolina Zoological Park. You know what I'm talking about in Asheboro? Well, it's not just a zoo you drive up and park outside of. If you've ever been to the zoological park, you have to park the better part of a mile away and then walk your students in, because if you're in a charter bus, the charter bus lot is way away from the entrance and you have to watch them all in. Well, I had teachers to supervise each of the groups. I mean, the park is several thousand acres. It's got a tram that goes around it. I mean, it's really difficult. So I had groups, and I had this parent who was a non-custodial parent, came to me, this lady, and said, I want to go with my child, and just begged me to go with her child and be in charge of her group. And, me being the idiot that I am, I made sure that as the non-custodial parent, that it was okay with the custodial parent. So she went on the field trip and we went into the park. Well, it was, the sirens went off and weather warnings started, and I called for everybody to go to the buses. Well, she decided that she wanted to go one more time around the tram with her girl. I don't work for you. And, off she went. So I got all of them out to our buses, and I had to go running back, and it was a better part of a mile. Of course, I was a lot younger and slimmer then, and finally got them out. And just as we got to the buses, basically had to jerk them off the tram to get them, and make up the kids come. And she was pouting and acting. I found out really quickly why she was a non-custodial parent. Her 7th grade daughter was a whole lot more mature than she was. And got them to the buses, and we didn't even get to leave. We had to pull over when the tornado hit Asheboro in the late 80s and killed all those people and tore everything up. We were out in that. It nearly turned our buses over. We nearly got killed in that mess. We could have been 30 minutes or further. We could have driven out of it if we'd have been able to get them on the bus easily. Could have been away from there before that happened. So we nearly lost some lives over that deal, over me not understanding that it wasn't a good idea to have somebody who was not a responsible adult be in charge chaperoning a field trip. Just got lucky that nobody got killed. So those are the kinds of things that you as the person in charge need to know. You need to have chaperones. You need to have responsible people. You need to follow the policy. You need to have permission. Field trips are a wonderful thing, but they are high risk endeavors. You need to understand that before you engage in those. But again, there's so many things that can go wrong, and so few things that can go right. You better know those kinds of things. But we use that as an example of something that's concrete. You better know the rules. You better know the policies. You better know what your response in an emergency is going to be. Dr. Griffin Jordan, I'll let you talk about Durham field trips.
Okay, it's pretty structured in Durham. Everyone has a standard field trip form and field trip procedures. We, of course, permission from the parent. We have to look at the school budget, because especially if it's a field trip that students have to pay, we cannot deny a student from going because they don't have the funds. So on our field trip permission form or approval form, there's a line that says, how is it funded? If it's student funded, then the next line says, how will you pay for it? What will the school do if a student is unable to pay for the trip? And we always put that the school will support the student in making sure they can go. If it's an educational trip, you cannot deny a student from going because of finances. So with that in place, then we look at chaperones. We try to stay as close as possible to our staff, especially our non-instructional staff like counselors and social workers going on our field trips. If we were to have a parent chaperone, just like any visitor in our school or volunteer in our school, our district has a volunteer clearance list. So we don't allow any parents to go and be close to students if they're not approved through our district to be a volunteer, which is a simple background check and such. I'm wondering if that parent that you had, Lamb, would have passed that background check.
No, probably not.
Yeah, so we
Because
always do that.
being a non-custodial parent, I'm quite sure there was substance abuse issues.
There's a reason.
Yes.
So also we provide student lists to our staff of the students who are going, because there's the attendance issue. Our district is big on over 95% attendance. So we don't want any student to mistakenly be marked absent when they're gone on a field trip. As far as once we get on the field trip, we have to make sure that the person in charge of the field trip, whether it's an administrator or lead teacher, has a copy of all of the permission forms, and we leave another copy at the school with our data manager, so that if anything happens, the person in charge of the trip has the medical information, everything that they need to know, contact numbers for parents for the field trip. So that's pretty much the gist of our field trips. It is, like I said, very structured process that we do follow in the district.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, I am posting that document that has everything that should be addressed that Dr. Griffin Jordan just went over, and I went over that document. I am posting it under Zoom session 3 tonight. It's down here at the bottom. All right, so let me do some shout outs right quick before we talk about case study next week. All right, so Amanda's with us tonight, I believe. Let me stop my share. Amanda made a great point about liability versus learning experience. I mean, we talked about that. I mentioned that a minute ago. That's a great point. I mean, how many things do we really need to do? I mean, you know, I don't want us to stay, never do anything. But I think because if you once you understand what all the hoops you got to jump through and all the liability that's out there, I think, you know, we need to be careful that we evaluate closely the learning experience, that we can't get it any other way. And I think Amanda made that point. I thought that was a great point. Thank you for that, Amanda. Terrence is developing a policy for his school right now. And so I think he's the document that I just sent. I think that would be a great help to you, and it'll be a great learning experience for you to do this, because you won't just learn about field trips. You'll learn a lot about liability and responsibility and supervision and documentation and all of those kinds of things that you really have to be, you know, this is a detailed business because of liability. Again, non-feasance. You had a duty to act and you didn't. You got to be in the details. You can't just be, well, if I didn't mean to do anything, you know, then I'm okay. Well, no, you have a duty to act. And then I guess part of the last thing that I wanted to say, Justin's not with us tonight, but he had a great list as well. But one of the last things that I wanted to say is parents are going to sue you if their kids get hurt. And if you haven't crossed your T's and dotted your I's, I mean, if you did something as dumb as not call 911, it was just minor. Oh, that one won't go to court. Your district will settle that one. But now you'll go to court on a civil suit and lose everything you've got if you didn't call 911. But you can believe that if your district is involved, if you're involved and you have an accident on a field trip, you're going to get sued. That it's just that notion. Now, I hate to say this, but there was an accident, I guess, sometime last week where 2 staffers from the University of Georgia and 2 of their football players were involved in a wreck at 2:30 in the morning. Unfortunately, one of the staffers and one of the football players was killed. The other 2 were injured pretty seriously. Now, the University of Georgia has already come out and said that the staffer that was driving the car that was killed, that this was an unauthorized use of that vehicle, that she was not authorized to be out at 2:30 in the morning coming. I won't say that, but at 2:30 in the morning. Now, I mean, I understand what they're doing. They're trying to shift the onus to that young woman's family in terms of the liability that's coming and the lawsuits that are coming, but that's not going to work. They know that, but they're trying. What they're doing now is they're trying to influence the jury in the trial. Is what they're trying to do. I don't think it's going to work, but it's certainly not going to stop the parents from suing Georgia, University of Georgia. They're just trying to, you know, get ahead of the PR deal to try to influence jurors is what they're trying to do. But they're going to get sued. That's certain. I'm certain they'll lose. You can't give a 24-year-old a car and say, don't use this in the middle of the night to transport players if that's part of your job. Sorry. But anytime there's any kind of an accident on a field trip, now, I don't know where they've been in the intervening times. I'm not going to get into the gossip, but they had, well, this was a championship celebration that they had been to. And they were supposed to be driving these fellas to and from. So that it happened at 2:30 in the morning that they took a detour somewhere, it's immaterial. But the learning lesson there is when you get in the vehicle, there's a lot of liability, even if you have the best intentions, there's a lot of liability, and there's a lot in all pieces of school. All right, so that covers our liability, that covers tort liability, covers negligence, all those things, safety plans, all that. So that module is done now. Now we're going to focus on our first case study, which is coming up next week. So our first case study, if you remember, I showed you a minute ago. Let me go back to that again. So our first case study coincides with the first of the statutes in terms of principal duties and responsibilities, which is to grade and classify pupils. It also speaks to due process. It speaks to processing discipline, due process. It speaks to federal zero tolerance law, which is against the law to put somebody out for a year without any kind of due process. It speaks to several things here about how you do discipline, how grades are done, all those things kind of together. And so I did want to take a minute to talk about this first case study. And if you don't know which one it is, it's Will Cheating Strike Bobby Out? I think I probably have it here somewhere. Let's see. There it is. So this is the one we're talking about here. Now, I want to make sure that you catch a couple of points on this. I was asked today by Derek about the state grading system that I alluded to. We'll assume that this child's in North Carolina. So let me show you a couple pieces of things here. Okay, so who in the end assigns the final grade for this yearly grade? This is Bobby's an 8th grader. This is his yearly grade. This is for the whole year, whether he goes to high school or not. Who assigns that final grade? Anybody know? Does the teacher assign the final grade? No. What did the law just say under 115C 288A? Who assigns that final grade? The principal does. So the principal's got to make a decision here based on the facts of the case. All right. So the facts of the case is that the policy in the district says that if you cheat, you may get a failing grade. Can that mean a failing grade for the year? Does it have to say for the year or for the course, whatever? Can it mean that you can give that kid a failing grade for a year for cheating on an assignment? It cannot. How do you know that, Dale? What does federal law say on zero tolerance? It says you cannot fail a kid for the year over one incident. That would be zero tolerance, wouldn't it? That's federal. That's a federal violation. 14th Amendment, off Civil Rights Act, several things. So when students argue with me, well, we ought to support the teacher because it says if they cheat, they get a failing grade. Not for the year, on the assignment. It can't mean for the year because that's a federal law. You can't have a law or policy at your school that violates federal law. Now, again, go back to that manual I showed you last week, that disciplinary data manual. Let's look at it. And it speaks to zero tolerance expulsions, that they are against the law. And so if we went back to, there it is. If we went back to this, it actually has a section in here that addresses that you can't do that. Okay, Office of Civil Rights, see right here, zero. If you did that, you have to report that you broke the law. You cannot remove a child from school for the remainder of the year longer because of zero tolerance. That's against the law. It's against the law to do that. So it can't mean that the child can fail for the year. What it means is on that particular assignment. All right, so that clarifies that. Now, back to the facts of the case. The teacher counted this out-of-class assignment, whether we call it an out-of-class assignment or homework, and I won't debate you on that because it's a moot point. She counted that grade more than 50% of the yearly grade and failed Bobby for the year. Is that legal? Can she do that? That would be no. Every district has a grading policy, but the overall overarching is set by the State Board of Education. And so right here it is. Here's their policies on GPA and all those things. And so here is how that is done in elementary and middle. This is how it is done. Every district has this, where they set, they call it different things, homework. I mean, I used to call it, they call it prepare and rehearse, and perform and all that. But here's how it kind of breaks down. It's not how it breaks down. This is how it breaks down across North Carolina. I've got it right here. So state testing in terms of the final grade counts between 20 and 30%. All right. Why is there a variation there? Because some districts do quarterly testing. If your district does quarterly testing, they count 10% and the state counts 20. What if you're in a district that doesn't do quarterly testing? Well, it counts 30 for the state exam. That would be the EOG or the EOC. EOG being an elementary, EOC being an high school. All right. Class assignment tests count 30%. In-class assignment projects, I'm sorry, class assessment or tests. The one you give on every section or on Fridays or whatever as a teacher, those count 30%. In-class assignment and projects, 20%. Out-of-class assignments, project, 10%, and homework, 10%. That's for the whole year. So, as I said, you can debate me whether, and I won't engage, whether what the assignment that the teacher gave Bobby, if it was an out-of-class assignment, okay, or project, that's 10% for the whole year for every one of them. Or if you want to count that as homework, again, 10% for the whole year for all of them. Where does it say that she can count that one assignment, whether you call it an assignment or homework, more than 50% of the yearly grade? By state law, by district policy, what is the most? All of them, not just this one, but all of them can only count how much? 10%. All of them in total. So whether you want to count this as homework or whether you want to call it an out-of-class project, the most that all that you give for the year can count as 10%. The most. The teacher counted it more than 50% in order to fail Bobby for the year. Is that an expulsion? Absolutely. Bobby's out for a whole year. Now, if we give Bobby the opportunity by state law, if we get, and that's in that manual again on alternative placements, if we give Bobby the opportunity to go to summer school, does that void that zero tolerance, illegal zero tolerance expulsion? If we say, well, we put him out for a year, we failed him for a year, but we're going to let him come back to summer school, does that in any way mitigate that? It does not. And it says so clearly in the language that you give an alternative assignment or summer school or send them to discipline school for 6 weeks does not negate the fact that you expelled a kid or excluded a kid for a whole year without any due process. Did Bobby get to argue his case? Was there any oversight, any over? So in the end, is this case that difficult? If you know the law, no. But if you don't know the law, there's a lot of pitfalls in this one. You got to know that you can't put a kid out for a year without any due process. You got to know that no policy says that if you fail any particular assignment that you can fail for the whole year. You got to know that the teacher can't assign that final grade, only the principal can. So if you begin to know these things about grading is a big thing. That's why I showed that document, just how to calculate GPAs and all that stuff. It's crazy because there's a lot of stuff riding on that. So in essence, what's happened here is, you know, as I've told you before, I'll acknowledge that Bobby's a turd. His brother was probably a turd and the family are probably aggravated. The teacher took her shot. The real question is, you know, obviously you can't fail Bobby and you'll have to go back and, you know, you need to decide what recompense Bobby has to make. I mean, are you going to put Bobby in school suspension for a day? I mean, that's most districts, that's the most you can do. This is not really an academic problem. This is a discipline problem. Go to your code of conduct. One in Charlotte Mecklenburg says 1 day of ISS is the most you can give. You can just do a conference. You can let him make up the work. If you give him a 0 on his homework, I mean, if you felt like this project was that valuable, I mean, just have him redo the project. But again, it can't really be enough to hurt his academics one way or the other. But in the end, what are you going to do about, what are you going to do about his consequence? You need to look at your code of conduct in your district. What does it say that you do for plagiarism? And it's right there in the code of conduct. I promise you, it will be in yours. I can show you, looking at our time here, I can show you the one from CMS right quick. I believe I have it. Let me see. Let's see if it's under Zoom section 5. Come on. You can do it. CMS code of conduct. So what you would do is Bobby cheated on a homework assignment or an out of class assignment, whichever you prefer. But again, it's immaterial. So we pull up the handbook. If I can make it load here. Here we go. And so what we're going to be looking for is cheating, page 11. Okay. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, so here we go. Attendance, medication, personal misrepresentation, cheating. Right here, isn't this it? All right, so the minimum that you can do is a level 1 first time elementary through 8th grade. So that's pretty much all we can do is level 1. See page 9 as to what a level 1 would be. Okay, right here. Parent contact, verbal warning, social suspension from bus, or Saturday school for in-school suspension 1 day. That's the most of everything on the list. That's the most by law that you can do to Bobby for what he did. She excluded him for the year. You could have brought a gun to school and shot it and got less punishment than Bobby for turning in his brother's homework assignment. Right here, in-school suspension 1 day. That's the most you can do. There's other things on here. You could just give him a verbal warning. The most you could do is 1 day of in-school suspension. 1 day. And he got a whole year out of school. I mean, when you read this case, did it not seem just a little bit much that a kid turned in his brother's homework assignment and he got thrown out of school for a whole year, got retained for a whole year? Well, and the reason why I'm dwelling on this, and we're at the benediction here tonight, there's 2 standards in law that we're going to now be shifting on into. When we talk about due process, that means, again, we talked about last week, there's 2 standards of due process, substantive and procedure. Substance, what are you supposed to get? What's the law say that you're supposed to get? And then the procedure that you did as an administrator, what did you give them? Did you give them what you were supposed to in terms of hearing their case, presenting witnesses, gathering evidence, the whole deal? But there's 2 standards. When you actually discipline kids, there's 2 standards that you got to be aware of. They're arbitrary and capricious. Arbitrary is very simple. Dr. Griffin Jordan catches me and Sandra Staten out back of the gym smoking. She tells Sandra to go to class and she shoots me. All right. She has violated both principles of arbitrary and capricious. Arbitrary is she decided to punish me and not Sandra for the same infractions. That would be arbitrary. Capricious would be, doesn't it seem a little harsh to shoot me over smoking? I know smoking's bad for you. I'm not a smoker, but that seems like a little bit much, don't you think, to shoot me over smoking? Well, that's what capricious is. In this case that we have coming up next week, your first case, it should have rung a bell with you that, wait a minute, Bobby failed for the whole year over turning in his brother's homework assignment? Don't that seem a little harsh, a little capricious? It absolutely is. And so the notion here is that these kinds of things, you got to follow due process, but these kinds of things are things that you have to track intellectually. And I'll tell you, as a young administrator, I wrote them down. That when I had Jimmy in and he did this, and this is what I gave him, so that I could kind of track myself. That was in the days before Power School. Now you can track yourself just like that. You can pull a report and you can track am I giving the boys a lot more punishment than the girls for the same infraction? Am I doing it, is it racial or is it ethnic? You can track yourself. This is pretty good kid over here. He's in the AG group. If he does this, I only give him this much. But if this kid over here that, is in the low group, I give them that. That's what you have to track yourself to make sure that you're not being arbitrary, that you're trying to be as equitable as you can be when you're due processing kids. And the other piece is, did you follow the code of conduct adopted by your district? As I told you, the state sets the rules, they send the manual out. These things will not happen in our building. The local board of education adopts a code of conduct that says how much consequence you get for doing those things. That's up to the local. Again, in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, where I worked last for all those years, very simple. A kid, turns in his brother's homework paper. The most you can give him is 1 day of ISS. If you give him more than that, you're being capricious. And if you do that, that is, you can get sued and you will lose. I'll let Dr. Griffin Jordan close us out tonight. Again, Dr. Griffin Jordan, thank you for being with us.
Of course. So yes, as Dr. Lamb said, you've got to be very cognizant and careful with the decisions that you make. In this particular case, you've got to remember why you're there and why the students are there is to get an education, is to make sure they master the content. So if you're given a lot of feedback and a lot of different assessments, you're measuring their level of mastery. So you can't take one assignment for a whole curriculum and decide that that is going to determine if they've mastered the content. So what we do as far as plagiarism in the district, the first one, as Dr. Lamb said, the most you can do is a suspension, in-school suspension a day. What we do at my school, we do give the student the opportunity to resubmit. That first time we talk with the parents, we have a counselor to come in to meet with the student, have a conference. We give them the opportunity. We explain to them about the future and college and how this could affect them, but they're learning. So we do give them that opportunity. So we don't even give them the 1 day of ISS the first time. And if it happens again, of course, then we'll revisit it. But give them that chance to resubmit and see if they really can master the content. So that's your overall purpose, is to see if the students are learning. So that's what you need to keep in mind when you're dealing with situations like this.
Thank you. So the question is, are we still presenting? Absolutely. I want to hear what you think. I want to see, I told you, we're moving up another level now. You started out using Zoom just to communicate, then it was to give one another feedback. Now we're using Zoom to collaborate and produce a product, a professional product like that we might share with our faculties. Guess what? I'll bet you that Dr. Griffin Jordan, pretty much every time she has a faculty meeting, she has some kind of a presentation for her faculty. Because if you just tell people, they pretend to forget it. Just like me tonight. Everything that I covered tonight is under our session. A lot of those PowerPoints I created myself. That's how we communicate content to the folks that we lead and we work with. And so this is your first foray into creating a professional presentation that will explain the things that I went over tonight. I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, but you've got to be able to explain these things and present this to a faculty. You've got to be able to lead the room, folks. If you can't command the room, if you can't communicate with folks in your building, you can't be a school leader. I can teach you all the law in the world, but you've got to be able to communicate that, and you've got to be able to hold the room when it comes time for faculty meetings. And the big way that we do that is we create these collaborative projects, and we share them with the folks that we lead, because we want them to be educated and understand what we're doing. We're not working in isolation here. We need the consent of the government. And that's the whole notion. Again, thank you for being with us tonight, Dr. Griffin Jordan. Thank you, as always, our expert. I'm looking forward to our presentations next week. Remember, everybody presents the same case, and we'll see how you did. And I'm hoping that, again, I have a plan here. Hope's not a plan, but I think that y'all are going to do great, and I'm excited to see your projects next week. All right, I'll see you next Tuesday. Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.